So Washington State and Oregon State, they've got to win football games this year. They just do. Now, next week, early next week, reportedly, we're going to have an idea of who Washington State's quarterback is actually going to be. It could be one of two guys who have been battling out. Used to be more like a three-man battle, but now it's down to a couple of guys. And look, are they going to have the same level of production that they had at the high end of Cam Ward over the last couple of years? No, I don't think so. Could you have a quarterback that does a better job not going off script so often, protecting the football a little bit more than Cam Ward had a tendency to do? Yeah, you could find that. Are you going to have the high-end production value? Like, these are the give and take questions that I have about Washington State. But I think they're going to get off to a slow start because the front end of the schedule just doesn't do them any favors at all whatsoever. But I actually like Washington State's roster. When you look at the number of outgoing transfers that they have this offseason, they and Oregon State both have experienced this because of their de facto relegation to, playing a Mountain West Plus schedule this season and probably next year as well. We'll see what they end up doing. And heck, maybe this season has an impact on what you do. Because if you're Oregon State or Washington State, if you win somewhere between 8 to 10 games this year, you could be a more appealing option to a Big 12 team. Because suddenly beating them, well, that's got a little bit of value. Because you win and it's not just, well, we lost to this team. And I'm not saying you could play a high-end conference caliber or conference championship caliber team, but somebody who might need a game that's in the middle of back end, you take any Power 4 game that you could get, and if they could see some value in it, I'm just saying, winning this season has a lot of potential benefits for Oregon State and Washington State, more arguably than anybody else. I think Oregon State ends up going 8-4. I think Washington State ends up going 9-3. I think it's going to be the inverse of what the Cougs had a season ago. I still like Jake Dickert. I still like the staff. I think there are a lot of key players in place. I think they have done a good job in the offseason. They've had a couple of noticeable departures, but if you look at the lineup of guys who transferred out from Washington State this year, not a whole lot are going to other Power 4 schools. So you're not losing, at least on paper, a bunch of guys who, these were high-end starters. These were guys who were going to be key contributors like Cam Ward would have been, or Josh Kelly, who went down to Texas Tech and is going to play in Pullman this year, week 2. We'll get to that game in just a moment. Like those things, those sorts of players, okay, they matter. You lost a couple players in the NFL draft. Okay, I see that. But between Oregon State and Washington State, whose roster do I feel better about? The answer is Washington State. I feel better about the quarterback situation. I feel better about the roster as a whole. And I know more about the head coach. I've seen Jake Dickert for the last several years. I know he's good. I think Trent Bray is good. But I don't know that yet. I think Ryan Gunnarson's good as OC. Haven't actually seen him call a game for Oregon State with this iteration of the Beavs just yet. But for Washington State, they open with Portland State. That's going to be a win. And then I think they're going to fall on tough times. Now, if they win any one of these 3 games that I'm coming on here and predicting them to lose, their season outlook suddenly gets really, really rosy. I mean crimson rosy good. I don't know if that made any sense, but hopefully you get what I'm going for here. Because the back half of this schedule, it's so workable. It's so workable. But they have to endure a stretch. Week 2, Texas Tech comes to town. That's a swap game where Oregon wanted to play Oregon State to continue the rivalry. They were supposed to play Texas Tech. Washington State needed a game after the Pac-12 collapsed. They said, we'll take a Power 4. Texas Tech needed a road game. They're already going to the Northwest. Boom. Texas Tech's going to Pullman. College football scheduling is wild. It's just another data point, a feather in the cap of what I've said for a long time. College football scheduling should be done on an annual basis. Doing it years in advance makes no sense. It is not necessary. Don't listen to anything that anybody tells you along those lines. Texas Tech week 2. I like Washington State, but I like Texas Tech more. They have a better roster. I trust the quarterback situation more. I like Joey McGuire. Pullman's a tough place to play. Ask Wisconsin. Ask anyone that's gone to play in Pullman over the last couple of years. Cougs are tough. The Cougs are tough up there. That's been well established. Texas Tech, I think, can handle it. I think Texas Tech's a real solid team this year. I think they go into Pullman and get that win. Washington's a neutral site game. Washington State's about a 7.5-point dog to the Huskies there. Do not be shocked if that game is close as it was a year ago, which it shouldn't have been. On paper, Washington State, now, by the time that game was played, Washington State didn't look as good as they were early in the year, but they showed what their potential really was. When they went to Seattle and they darn near beat the Huskies, who had to go for it on 4th and 1 and went with the end around to Odunze. I mean, that was some gutsy stuff. They had to dig deep to find that win. Don't be surprised if Washington, with a completely new roster and a completely new coaching staff, has to do it again. I do think they have more high-level players than Washington State, so I'll take the Huskies in a neutral site matchup at Lumen Field in Seattle. Should be a de facto home game for the Dogs. Then Washington State comes back home. They play San Jose State. They'll get back to 500 with a win. Then they go at Boise and at Fresno. They are splitting those games. Now, my guess, lose to Boise State, beat Fresno State. But if this is a 2-0 stretch for Wazoo, look out. Look out. If this is a 2-loss team through their first 6 games, I tell you what, 10-2 is on the table. Because I look at the back half of that schedule, and I think Washington State has got the better roster. I think they have got the better staff across the board. Hawaii at San Diego State, and the Aztecs will be all right, but I don't think they're at Washington State's level yet. Utah State at home. There's a messy situation over there. Bryson Barnes is the quarterback. They might be okay, but again, in Pullman, taking the Cougs. At New Mexico, they're going to be rough. At Oregon State, that's the toughest one. That's the toughest one that'll define whether they keep the winning streak going. But then they get Wyoming, pretty solid team, but they get them at home. The back half of that schedule, if Washington State can find a way to just be 4-2 through the first 6 games of the season, 10 wins is within reach. It is absolutely within reach. Now, is there a mystery element here to Washington State? Yeah, there's a mystery element to what the Cougs can be this year because they don't have several notable impact players from a season ago. Still, I think the core of the team is solid. I think some of the transfers they've brought in are going to make an impact. Guys like Chris Hudson at the wide receiver position, I think is a really, really good replacement for Kelly, who went down to Texas Tech. And whoever ends up being named the starter by Jake Dickert and company, that guy will have won it throughout a true quarterback battle. Now, do I like teams more that return a quarterback or know who their quarterback is in the spring? Yeah. But have we seen teams emerge from a quarterback battle and go on to succeed? Also, yes. And it is entirely possible that this is going to be that this Washington State team is close to what they were last year. Not exactly what they were, but close to what they were last year, which was still a 5-7 football team in a loaded Pac-12. Well, what do you do with a Mountain West schedule? If you're 5-7 there, you're probably at least an 8-win team. And I think Washington State's at least an 8-win team. I'll go with 9-3. Schedule works out pretty well, particularly on the back half. That Pac-2 championship, penultimate week in the regular season in Corvallis at Oregon State. That game's going to have a heck of a feel to it, but I think this shapes up pretty well. Early stumbles for the Cougs, but they will figure it out. And if they win one of Texas Tech, Washington, or Boise State, vibes could be higher than they are right now, given all the uncertainty up there in Pullman.